Welcome back to the final Behavior Bites video of Chapter 1 from Cooper. We're on the 3rd edition on page 16. We're going to talk about the 7 dimensions of ABA as well as the promise and potential of ABA in this day and age. So go ahead and grab your favorite beverage, get cozy. It's your time to unwind, de-stress, and learn about ABA so it can be your bestie again. Applied. So basically this means that the target behaviors that we're working on are going to make a significant improvement in the learner's quality of life. So what can this look like? If you have an individual who's trying to get a job but is unable to fill out the application forms, that's something you can work on. If you are looking at a child who's always dreamed of being on the soccer team but doesn't have the communication skills to collaborate with team members, that's a skill you can work on. If you're looking at an individual that wants to date but does not know how to engage in reciprocal conversation, that would be a skill that would work on. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a maladaptive or challenging behavior. It can be another skill that's just going to improve their everyday life. Behavioral. So obviously we're going to have behavior and applied behavior analysis, but there's a few important things about the behavior that we're going to actually study and manipulate. The behavior needs to be something that needs to either increase or decrease, and as we already talked about with applied, it needs to be socially significant and make an actual improvement in the learner's quality of life. It also needs to be measurable. So it needs to be something that you can actually take data on, because it is, again, part of science where we would need to make observations and take measurements to determine whether or not our interventions are actually increasing or decreasing the behavior, as well as making sure that it's not just the observer who is making changes or making it seem like there is or is not any change based on the intervention. Analytic, where we want to be able to prove that we actually have control over the behavior through a functional relationship. So this is why it's very important when you're conducting FBAs that you're able to determine the function and then create preventative, replacement, and consequence strategies that are function-based, right? Because we want to have that functional relationship so that we can have control over this behavior, so that we can either increase it if need be or decrease it if it's something that is harming the individual and their quality of life. Technological. So this one is something that I always use the little instructions in the Lego packets as an example, because I am absolutely horrible at making those little Lego things. I can't do it. It takes me a really long time. I don't have the skills or patience to do them, but if you give me enough time, I will eventually figure it out. Why? Because the instructions are detailed. It comes with a picture. It's like step 1, step 2. So essentially, when you are writing interventions or behavior plans, treatment plans, you want to make sure that it's technological enough, like reading a recipe and being able to follow a recipe, so that any person who sees it can also implement it. So if you have a team of RBTs or a team of staff members, doesn't matter, because they can all follow the same instruction. Effective. So great, we are targeting behaviors that are socially significant, that are going to actually make a change in our learners' lives, right? But how do we determine if they're actually effective? Like, are they making an actual change in their lives? Are we teaching them communication skills with peers that they're actually going to generalize outside of the clinic setting, outside of the one-to-ones, outside of the session at home? Are they actively using the skills that you taught, right, and that you increased in a controlled environment on the playground, at a birthday party, at grandma and grandpa's during Christmas when they have to meet all of our cousins and aunts and uncles, right? So we want to make sure that we are actually making a significant change in progress so that it is effective for the learner. Generality. So I kind of jumped the gun there with effective, because generalization is the learner able to also engage in these new behaviors, replacement behaviors, or reduced behaviors across different environments and time, right? So a lot of kiddos that you'll see are like doing amazing and they do great and they move from baseline to intervention and they get generalization, and then you hit weekly maintenance or monthly maintenance and all of a sudden those 80s, 90s, and 100s drop to zero. Why? Because there's no generality. They're not generalizing those skills. They're not sticking with them. They haven't really fully learned them, which is why it's important to consider the mastery criteria. What are you doing? Are you doing 90% across 5 consecutive sessions? Are you doing 80% across 3 consecutive sessions? That also has a lot to do into how much they retain. Conceptually systematic. So basically this means that we're always going to take interventions and start off with the basic principles of ABA. We're always going to start off following all of these interventions that we know work, that have been reproduced through evidence-based procedures and research and have always given the same result. And from those interventions, then we can go ahead and tweak it, right? Because we want all these interventions that we apply for our learners to be individualized. So we want to make sure we're using ABA, basic principles, and then we can tweak them for an individual or learner to make progress for a behavior, to change the behavior. We're not just going to make up stuff because we're behavior analysts. So wrapping up, as practitioners of ABA, we want to make sure that we're held accountable for our actions, right? So like when you go to the doctor and the doctor gives you a medication because he thinks you have a cold, he's not going to give you something for diabetes, right? He's going to stick to a cold medication. If that one doesn't work, then he'll give you a different brand or strain of the cold medication, right? Same thing with ABA. We want to stick to the basic principles of ABA and then tweak them as we go along so that they're individualized for our learner. We want to make sure that if we make a mistake and something's not working, that it's okay. It's a science. We're just going to move on to the next intervention that is going to possibly help either increase or decrease his behavior until we find the good fit for the learner. It's super important for ABA to follow the science of behavior so that we can make these significant changes in these people's lives, not just the individual getting the treatment, but the people in their immediate environment. We want these things to help them so that all of their lives increase. We want to help them so that they have a better quality of life, not end up hurting them by implementing things that are not ABA or are things that you would not do in public, right, in front of a judge or a police officer or even your parents or the learner's parents. We have a duty, an ethical duty as behavior analysts to use the science of behavior to improve and help others and not bring them down and hurt them. ABA should also be empowering and optimistic. Why? Because the whole point we're studying behavior is to make a socially significant change. So it should empower the individuals that are actually getting this treatment, as well as the caregivers, the staff, and the teachers that are working with them that are implementing these interventions. Can you imagine working with somebody and implementing ABA and not showing a change? That would be really frustrating. It would be overwhelming sometimes and would just be disheartening if you're a parent that's been on the wait list for years waiting to start ABA services so that there's a significant change to help your child and you can't see an improvement. So it's super important that ABA follows the basic principles of ABA and that it is studied and changed to make improvement so that we can give hope to these parents and individuals that are getting service. One of the best things that you'll see as a behavior analyst is empowering your staff and your caregivers and seeing them improve with their work, as well as see the optimism and hope for future goals to be met through the science of behavior. So I hope you enjoyed this Behavior Bite video. Stay tuned. I will be back next week with a brand new chapter. Enjoy the rest of your day. See you later.